Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Chang, host and executive producer of Bloomberg Technology. And joining me now is the CEO and chair of IBM, Arvind Krishna. Arvind, I'm so excited to be interviewing you. I interviewed you a couple of times before you became CEO, but we're now coming up on your 1-year anniversary on the job. So good to have you with us today.
My pleasure to be here, Emily. Good to talk to you again.
And it is actually almost exactly 1 year because you took over officially on April 6th. IBM announced you'd be becoming CEO on January 30th, and then the world changed. By the time you took over, we were in the middle of lockdown. You had 345,000 employees in 175 countries that you needed to look after. What was that like, taking over as CEO of such a massive company in the middle of a pandemic?
Yes. So Emily, it's a great question. So end of January, I got named, and I would say in hindsight, we should have seen the pandemic coming, but at that point, we didn't really know it was coming. And I remember I was out in Davos the week before I was named, and there was no talk, not even a whisper, not even a murmur of a global pandemic. But obviously, it was already happening because if I remember it right, Northern Italy, Singapore, Japan, China were all in there. So the first thing you got to worry about is the health and safety of your employees and your clients. That really becomes priority number one. And so we focused upon that. We made sure everybody could work effectively from home. Because when you say safety, it's not just enough to make sure they don't get infected. They want to get their work done because in the end, we live to service our clients, and you got to make sure that can be done. And I remember that weekend very distinctly. I think it was 9th of March. Then we said, okay, 13th likely we're going to have to pull this. And we got to get all 350,000 people working from home. Over 200,000 of them were used to working from centers. How do you get them equipment, all the cybersecurity, all the safety, what's going to be our protocols? Then you have to evolve into what's the social contract going to be? How do you make sure that people don't work all the time? How do they make sure you don't get burnt out? Because people can sort of expect, do you work all the time or some of the time? And we had to come up with social rules on the fly. And that became a very good learning experience where a lot of our people talked about this in terms of, hey, it's okay to be off video, not like we are doing on video, because people have small homes sometimes, and that's where geography comes in. You have to follow the local guidelines.
Right.
Go ahead.
For you as a leader who's not just taking in charge of these 300,000 employees, but also just starting a new job, was that scary? I mean, another CEO described it to me as like a moment of terror. And I'm wondering what was going through your mind.
So maybe as an engineer and a technologist, I tend not to approach these things with so much a feeling of terror. But you have to acknowledge things are uncertain. We don't have all the answers. So I was very clear. Look, I'm going to go by 3 months. By 3 months, I'm not going to try to pretend that I can predict the answer for you. Because some were saying, oh, get back to work right away. Some were saying, no, it's going to be a year and a half. And I said, I don't know. I know it's going to be at least 3 months before I have a better answer. And so you step back and you say, what can you get done? But team building and culture, I think, is the point which you're making implicitly is the most important. So when you come in, you know the team, but they haven't all worked for you. So how do you build a team virtually? That's something then we had to learn on the fly, because you have to learn to work with each other. You have to learn to trust each other. They have to know, okay, we worked with Arvind's predecessors, but can we work with him? Do we trust him? Is he going to lead the company in the right direction? The world's changing. Actually, you're accelerating 10 years worth of change into 1 or 2. And so as you do that, there is going to be a lot of uncertainty and fear. And how do you get people over that hump? But I think actually that also sometimes maybe in the crucible of the crises we are in, maybe you gel a team quicker and you can get there quicker, and you can also get change done quicker, not only to service the market, but also that which is essential to grow the company. So Emily, both. So you have to service the moment, and you can't ignore the crisis. You can't pretend it's not there. But at the same time, you can also then take advantage of the moment and get change done.
So where are you now? Some folks have called this the sort of messy middle. Some people are vaccinated, some aren't. There's still a health risk out there. There's also, we've learned there can be some good things to come from remote and hybrid work. I've heard it all from CEOs. Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, says he wants people back at work as fast as possible. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, has said he's concerned about the social capital that expires over time. Then you have Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter and Square, who said people can work from home forever. And Coinbase has gone completely remote, whether you like it or not. Where are you on the spectrum?
I'm probably somewhere in the middle. So I would tell you, I believe that over time, maybe 80% of people are going to come back to work in a hybrid way. But let me explain hybrid, because hybrid doesn't mean that some are remote or some are in the office. By hybrid, I mean 80% will spend at least 3 days a week, maybe not all 8 to 10 hours, but at least some fraction of those 3 days in the office. Because of how do you create teams, how do you do creative work, how do you have the serendipitous actions, etc. Do I have all the perfect answers for are we going to leave it up to individuals? Is it going to be more orchestrated? Those are all the questions we have yet to answer. So I want to be clear on that. But I expect 80% will spend some time in the office or with clients or with each other somehow, somewhere. Could I see 10 to 20% being remote forever? It's possible. But then I'll tell you, I worry about the same as the words you mentioned. So when people are remote, I worry about what's their career trajectory going to be. If they want to become a people manager, or if they want to get increasing responsibilities, or if they want to build a culture with their teams, how are you going to do that remotely? So I think we can maybe figure it out, but we got to go work on it. On the other hand, if somebody's in certain roles, I could imagine in some form of deep customer service, it's probably fine to be home. But now if they want to do something else, now what do you do? So I think that the answer I have is maybe closer to your first half. They're going to come in, but that means the nature of the workplace is going to change. So the workplace may not be a set of cubicles or closed offices where people come in, go behind a door and get all their work done. That they might be doing partly at home. The workplace is going to be a place where you meet and you build your culture together. That means the physical nature of the workplace is going to change. And likely the amount of total real estate you have might also change.
So going into the pandemic, you had 70 million square feet of office space and more than 1,000 offices. Are you getting rid of some of that? Have you already?
I would imagine that we will get rid of tens of millions, Emily. Are we going to go towards zero? Absolutely not. Will we have over half of what we had? Most likely. But I think that as we consolidate, as we want to bring people together, there's an opportunity to, make the shift from, as I said, from cubicles to more meeting spaces. But also, if people are only going to be in there half the time, maybe 2/3 of the time, the total amount you need is going to change. And we are lucky, maybe. A lot of our office space is leased, not necessarily owned, albeit where I am sitting, I can tell you, is a building we do own, not lease. So it's a mixture, but I would imagine that there is going to be a substantial change, but it will take years. It's not going to happen overnight. I don't want to pretend that we are done with a plan for like next month.
What are your biggest concerns about innovation, and can innovation keep up in a hybrid environment?
I'll give you a great example. So my research team, who works on some of the hardest problems around quantum computing, around physical semiconductors, around chemistry, they actually have been coming in through the pandemic because they saw that they could not get their work done remotely. And they were excited to come. They were following all the protocols on social distancing, on testing, on signing up on everything as you enter and leave the building, and being careful at home. By the way, that whole community has had, I think, maybe one incident in the last 12 months. So that's remarkable. I believe that the serendipity of being able to walk the halls, of having those conversations, we know that those are where some of the eureka moments come from. By the way, my R&D community is hankering, by and large, to be back together. Maybe not 40, 50 hours a week, but at least some. So I see that those communities are going to be back together sooner rather than later. And so sort of full credit to all the vaccine makers and the rollout. I think the rollout is more optimistic than our worst fears. Of course, we would all desire it to go even faster globally, But at least in some countries, I can see a pretty good take up. And I'm hoping that by late summer, we're in a state where a lot more can be back together.
So where are you now? How many people are back? How many people are still remote? And I understand that there are plenty of people who never went home at all, the people testing the mainframes and the quantum computers.
Yeah, so 350,000 people globally, about 5% never went home. The people are, as you said, on the mainframe floor, the people in doing sort of the physical hard R&D, but that's maybe 8,000 people who continuously stayed. Today we are at about 15% are in the office. It varies a lot by geography. So at that number, you can say somewhere between 40 to 50,000 come into work some. But now I'll take two extremes. If we look at Australia, we look at China, a lot of people are coming back to work. We look in Singapore, maybe in the middle. I now come to Western Europe, almost nobody's in the office. I come to the US, maybe 10% are in the office, but it varies. Where I'm sitting is in a suburban location. You can easily get 20% of people into the building in a completely safe way. If I'm in New York City, our buildings there are at 1 or 2%. By the way, the 15% we're in is not mandated. We simply open the buildings right now and we say that those who feel safe can choose to come in. Somewhere later, maybe we'll get to who should come in, but we're not yet making hard and fast rules.
Now, one of the things that I'm really concerned about is women backsliding in the pandemic, leaving work, not going back, taking care of the children, helping them with school, not going back. Are you seeing evidence of women opting out, given that you have such a large number of employees? Is that a trend?
So let me begin by saying I am worried about it, but the numbers don't show it to us. Now, it may be because we leaned in very heavily towards the issues you're mentioning. So last July, when it became clear that the pandemic is longer and deeper than we had hoped for, because I could say hope, but I'm not saying that was the science. The hope was, hey, this is getting over. We were past the first bounce. Maybe the second bounce will be lower. But the moment schools went remote, we were clear to our employees, and it is because of some of these gender-based roles that just seem hard to budge in society, Emily. So we looked at it and we said, I'm not going to make it gender-based, but if working parents want to declare that they want to be someplace else for the next 9 to 12 months until schools come back, we are not going to penalize them. So we're going to say, even if we happen to come back earlier, working parents can go be where they can get the appropriate help. By the way, if working parents need to say, I need to take off for 2 hours because my kids have to get extra help at that time, we said, fine, that's great, completely allowed. So you got to give flexibility. Maybe because of all that, our numbers show we have not lost more. If I remember correctly, our promotion rate for women has remained steady. We are at, I think, 36 or 38% of all, and we feel good about that. I'd like to improve that, and we keep chipping away and making it better. But I think compared to many people in the industry, at least, we do feel good about where we are. And by the way, it's more than women, Emily. I think it's women, it's underrepresented minorities, it's people who come from disadvantaged backgrounds. I think the impact on some of those is going to be even bigger as we all sort of read and research.
100%. And on that note, the role of the CEO is changing. CEOs are now expected to put statements out about social issues, controversial social issues, whether it's the Me Too movement or the Black Lives Matter movement, or now it's about stopping Asian hate. I'm curious how you see those responsibilities and how you intend to fulfill those responsibilities as part of your new job.
Very, very deep question. So one, there is a role for us because we do deal with a lot of our employees, in my case with 350,000. Then I look at the pipeline of where we recruit from. You can say the ecosystem of who we work with. So it's obviously an influence across millions of people. So the positions you take are important, but you should back up your positions with principles. So we've always held a principle around, I think it goes back to 1923 or 34, around equal work for equal pay. We talked about you're going to be, that was across gender. Then we opened it up to ethnic identities. So if you look at those are principles. So whenever you see those principles being attacked, you should be willing to go fight for your principles. And we have done that. around gender identity, around some of the claims around the elections. We were clear about our statements. Yes, I did put out a statement around condemning the violence against Asian Americans, but it's in the category of all hate crime. I think that we should respect all ethnic minorities, Emily, not just one or two. And so it's in that context, and we'd be willing to then back up. And we did. We asked Georgia, for example, when they had the hate crime legislation, we leaned in. We will not fund politicians. We will not fund certain elections, but we will advocate for policy positions. And you have to be authentic. And when it is true to your principles, you should be willing to make those statements publicly. And that's the role we have taken. And as you point out, people look at us for taking these positions. And I believe it helps the business long term. May not always help it right in the moment, but I do believe it helps the business long term because you can attract better talent. And in the end, we all agree, talent is the lifeblood of our business.
So you are now tasked with innovating the next chapter of IBM. And I'm curious where we should expect you to lead and how you intend to lead. How should we judge your progress? Certainly investors will be watching the stock.
Of course, investors only have the one measure, which is the stock price, and that is a definite part of my own report card and the company's report card. But let's just step back a little bit. There is the strategy of what you do, and then there is the how you do it. So I've been clear, we are going to be a hybrid cloud and AI company. And then I would say, as a bit of a half sentence, and quantum into the future. So the first thing we did is we sort of took out and we're going to spin out our managed infrastructure services business. So that's part of the focus. We are a hybrid cloud and AI company. So the pieces that fit that the most stay here. The pieces that don't, we'll spin out to go get value for our investors. Next, how are you going to lean into being even more of a hybrid cloud and AI company than you are today? So we're leaning in both organic investment and inorganic investment. I've completed 10 acquisitions, all on hybrid cloud and AI in the last 11 months and 25 days. So that's one step. But we've also opened up money for investment in terms of how we are going to invest both in our own organic innovation as well as with partners. So I announced $1 billion fund that we're going to work with partners to enable them on our platforms. So you begin to put those things together and you say, okay, you're increasing investment, you're focusing the company, you're spinning out pieces, you're acquiring companies, you're increasing your ecosystem with partners, and those should all result then in revenue growth, and we have committed mid-single digit revenue growth in the medium term. Now you put all that together, and then you begin to say that that is how you're going to value the company, and my goal is then to create a hybrid cloud platform that is even more vibrant than the mainframe and middleware was in the past, which are two platforms that we had a lot of success with.
Now, I know you're super excited about quantum, and I speak to many people who say they just don't think quantum is coming anytime soon. When will we see quantum truly transform the industry?
I give it a 3 to 5 year time period, which is not that long. So when you think about how hard that technology is, and I say that the market, so you always got to keep your eye on the economic opportunity. I think the economic opportunity, not just for us vendors, but for the people who use it, is in the $450 to $500 billion range within the decade. So then you can turn around, Emily, and say, how much of that will those of us who produce the technology get? If I go to all other technologies, 20% seems like a reasonable number. So the leaders in quantum stand to get as much as $100 billion somewhere in the next decade. Then you say, when is it going to happen? I think that it's quite real. So today you're having computers that are measured in qubits, quantum bits. So 30, maybe 60 is the range for this year. We just announced a partnership with the Cleveland Clinic, who wants to use quantum computing to further drug discovery, molecules, interactions around pathogens, et cetera. And that's an example where it's real problems. But I'll agree with you, it's not necessarily a commercial advantage or other forms of high performance computing or cloud today. I think that period will come in the next 3 to 5 years. We put out a roadmap to say we'll put 1,000 quantum bit, 1,000 qubit quantum computer in 2023. I think that's a bold goal. I think it's hard. I wouldn't tell you we have every problem solved, but I have a tremendous pride and confidence in our scientists and engineers. And by the way, engineers are as important here as the physicists to get these big systems working in this time period. And that's where I believe we'll then get on the roadmap towards those billions of dollars of advantage that I mentioned.
3 to 5 years is pretty close when you think about the scope of massive technological change. So we'll certainly have to catch up, at least at that point. Big news in chips. Recently, you're doing a partnership with Intel as they're doubling down on manufacturing, doubling down on a foundry business. Given all of the many industries that IBM is involved with in all of your diversity of clients, how devastating has the chip shortage been? And how much longer do you think it will last?
Whenever you get a constraint in a supply chain and you find that the sources and the manufacturing is down to 1 or 2 regions, this is going to last a few years. This is not a few months or a few weeks. So we should be clear about the impact. It's going to last that long. Then you say you've got to solve it. So we are working together with Intel because we do believe that there should be alternate sources of fabrication. And we do believe there should be competitive advantages in the more advanced nodes that are to come. That's where we have our strength. So we have a lot of work on 5, 3, 2 nanometers just to sort of categorize where we are. And just by the way, the world today is at 10 and 7 nanometers. So we're talking about the next generations. So we'll bring our advanced R&D into Intel, who will then produce the fabrication plants that can produce this at scale. And so we believe that that's a great way to work together. We also believe that that'll allow the pair of us together to be much better positioned to compete for the monies that are in the CHIPS Act, Endless Frontiers, as well as the National Semiconductor Technology Center. So those are all the opportunities in front of us that can result from the work we do together to advantage competitiveness within the nation.
Given how important talent is in terms of driving all of these innovations, President Biden now plans to let Trump's ban on H-1B visas expire, which has been considered a huge victory for tech firms, which have relied heavily on H-1Bs to bring in talent from overseas. How significant is this in your view, and what does it mean for IBM?
I would put it in the medium category. I would not put it in the highly significant. While we do use H-1B visas, we are not amongst the biggest users of H-1B visas. That said, there are multiple uses of these. One way is to leverage graduate students of other countries who are here getting advanced degrees, and then they get onto these visas in order to bring their skills after being heavily trained in US universities. That piece I find extremely interesting. In terms of the others, I would say that it's a medium impact to us, not a high impact. However, we are all in favor of immigration for skills. So when you have the right skills, I believe the government should put in place policies and principles that do allow that to happen well.
Now, IBM, meantime, is deep in major COVID innovations that are working to help us get out of this pandemic. Digital health passes that you're helping to build for employees with various companies. How do you think the pandemic will be written in our history books? What do you think the enduring story of this moment will be?
I think it'll be about the rate and pace of transformation. So we began by implementing techniques from the 14th century of quarantines to begin, because that's really what we did in order to service it. But then I think here is the first advantage. Scientific computation really helped get the vaccines into the market. So that's one. So that's a triumph of science over nature. Next, we are going to see a digital acceleration. More and more companies want to do everything digitally. That's not in the place of physical, but maybe it's an augmentation. But I think 10 years worth of digital acceleration is going to happen in 1 or 2. I see more and more CEOs talk about, let me emerge stronger from the pandemic. So people are really taking the hard task of how to get there. And the digital health pass you mentioned, New York State just went ahead and implemented it. They call it the Excelsior Pass. And this is, I think, a great technology that you can carry around, just like you have passports and driver's licenses. If you're vaccinated, maybe you can get in and see theater, or maybe you can watch live television in a studio for the small audience that is allowed, whereas today we are all isolated.
So, and final question then, it's obviously also a moment to redefine work and what work is, how we work. How do you intend to keep the good, leave the bad, and keep moving forward?
Look, this is why I begin by saying we don't have all the answers. So let's look at the good. Productivity is higher because people can work from where they are. We've also democratized talent because when everything is virtual, people can be anywhere on the globe. Those are great positives. But let's worry about the negative. You use the word social capital. We are burning up social capital. People who already know each other and trust each other can certainly work well. But how do we onboard people? How do we bring people in to understand the culture? We got to go learn that. As well as, what about disadvantaged communities because of the shrinking networks? Because of social capital, you work really well with the network you know, but you kind of ignore the larger network. So those are the balance points between what you should keep, the productivity, the flexibility, but maybe you should work towards how do you get over the inhibitors that are on the other side. But I do believe, that's why I said, I think hybrid is here to stay because that'll allow us then. And I think that we all got to work together to redefine how we're going to take advantage of all of the changes that are now accepted because of this.